and welcome to Tech to Tech presented by KYZEN, where we will explore common cleaning questions and answers. Let's get started. I would like to introduce KYZEN's own Jody Saultz.
Thanks, William. Thanks for joining today's Tech to Tech with KYZEN. We're going to talk a little bit about stencil cleaning, and then we have a 4-part series that's coming up. This is going to be part 1, so tune in to the next couple of weeks for parts 2 through 4 on stencil cleaner printing. Part 1 is going to cover off stencil cleaning and does your stencil printer cost you money. Part 2 will be how to optimize your printer. 3 will be basically IPA versus an engineered solvent. And then part 4, we're going to talk about paper selection and, does paper really make a difference? So Stencil Cleaning Series Part 1, is your stencil cleaning costing you money? If the primary goal in stencil printing is to basically put the right amount of material in a precise location and align the board to a stencil, and that's kind of what everybody thinks, and that's kind of what everybody does. However, there's a little bit more to the printing process than that. Typically, when a chemistry isn't performing well, there's usually a reason. It's either has a bad or broken delivery system, the wrong chemical selection, printer not set up correctly. You could have defective parts on the machines, such as blades, or it could even be into the stencil. And you'll hear me talk about this in most times. Most of the reasons is because nobody changes the default setting, and it's just not performing like it should. So if you think about the economics of printing, there's a couple things that you can really visually tell that cost you money, and that's the nano coatings. There's a cost associated with that. You know what the solvent cost per liter, whether it's an engineered chemistry or alcohol, you know what that cost is. And then the cost of a paper roll. There's cheap paper rolls and there's more expensive paper rolls. But at the end of the day, those only equal up to about 15% of the cost that it costs you to print. So those invisible costs, they add up to about 85%. Those are those evaporation costs, misprint cost, hours between stencil change, defect cost, and cost per prints. These are, in most cases, the things that customers never really focus on that probably cost them the most amount of money. So, pay attention to those costs and start tracking those. You'll probably be surprised of what it costs, invisible cost add up to. So what we know about printing, the printer chemistry, if you look at solvent-based versus water-based and then versus IPA, most solvents evaporate quicker than others. Some do anyway, and then usually they provide a wider range of flux solubility. Paper impacts solvent usage, but the biggest issue, like I said, is not adjusting default settings. If you look at the water-based, some of these chemistries split because they're mixed with water, so most of those typically are run at 15%. There's a different absorption and evaporation rate for these as well, and it varies in some cases. There's also a risk of leaving water on the stencil that could actually intermix with the paste and could cause some cross-contamination. This holds true for water and IPA as well. So many times I hear customers say, "Oh, we mix water with the IPA." That's worse than probably running an IPA at 100%, which I don't recommend anyway. And then, of course, not adjusting the default settings. And the problem with IPA may solubilize a few paste, but in most cases, it doesn't touch a lot of the paste, especially with the new paste that's coming out in today's technology. A lot of times those pastes can become gooey. If that happens, that starts sticking to your stencil, starts giving you some sealing issues. In some cases, it can dry out your apertures, which lead to board release problems. Alcohol is not the best direction to go, and we've done plenty of testing to prove that. And as you all know, IPA definitely evaporates a lot quicker than even an engineered solvent or a water-based solvent, water-based chemistry. And so alcohol also, it consumes a lot more just because the evaporation rate from the different papers that are out there. So those are things that we really know and understand about the chemistries. So if you look at some of the chemistries out there, you can do offline evaporation test. Of course, you'll want to do an environmental review. Is it safe to use? In most cases, I don't know of any printer manufacturer out there that recommends alcohol to be used in their printer. But I would suggest that the chemistry that you end up using in your machine, that you do evaluation on the printer itself. And whether you use the default settings or not, if you're just evaluating the offline evaporation test versus online, it really doesn't matter at that point as long as you are consistent across your testing. Um, so dial in that fluid and try to get the right amount of fluid that equals across the board, which is difficult to do just because of the saturation in the paper with different chemistries. Price per liter rather than price per hour. Look at that paper consumption, solvent used and evaporated, number of prints between wipes, stencil life, cost of defect, rework, misprints, like I said, and then nano coatings. Try to understand the whole process of these chemistries and how they affect the different areas of your process. So like I said, 90% of users never change their default settings. This is just a little graphic showing typical setup parameters for default settings and what you are able to change right off the bat. Most printers will just come with a standard default number, whether it's wet, dry, or vac on their wipes. And then they have a minimum, maximum time in seconds, and then vacuum pressure, and then the wipe frequency per wipe. So these are all numbers that you can change on your printer, and it's highly recommended to look at the numbers that you're using. Those numbers are, like I said, a default printer. You can get a lot of numbers from your paste manufacturer on setting up your printer. So be sure to look into those, and it'll help you optimize your printing process. This means inconsistent printing. Like I said before, 90% plus users never modify the solvent wipe settings. So too much will leave excessive solvent behind. It'll leave too much solvent on the bottom of the stencil and can mix with the paste, giving you an intermix or contamination of paste. Too little solvent won't effectively remove the flux from the bottom of the stencil or apertures. This also can cause defects, and solvent should be consistent along the length of the paper. Settings adjusted based on solvent paper interaction is typically between 15 and 20 millimeters. If you see more than 15 to 20 millimeters of wetting, you're absolutely using way too much solvent, and you need to do some adjustments to get your solvent to absorb where it leaves about a 15 to 20 millimeter width. So 5 simple steps to the approach. Select a chemistry that dissolves the flux. Optimize the settings for each chemistry tested based on the fluid delivery system, the paper interaction with the solvent, and always consider ending in a vacuum. So many customers out there end in a dry wipe, and vacuum is by far proven the best. And then test the chemistry on the printer rather than offline. Then you have the capability of doing an under stencil inspection, and also SPI is going to tell you the truth of whether you're having a good printing process or not. And evaluate the total cost of printing. So often, like I said, customers overlook these invisible costs, and those are typically what's costing you the most money. Just some of the frequently asked questions. How do I know what the best chemistry is for my printer? Well, I can tell you alcohol definitely is not the best one, and it's really not recommended by any printer manufacturer out there that I know. And the first step to finding out the best chemistry is to get with your chemistry suppliers, let them know what that paste is, and then they can send you in the right direction. But like I said, alcohol is not the answer. Our default settings, process parameter recommendations for from the manufacturer. They are exactly what they say they are. They're absolutely just default settings, and they are made to change. So please do your homework and optimize those settings. You're going to save a lot of money at the end of the day if you'll just play with that printer enough to optimize all these parameters to get your process in control. Does engineer solvents clean better than IPA? Absolutely. In some cases, we're able to take prints per wipe from 2 up to 10 to 15 in most cases. Of course, it always depends on what your apertures are, how small the aperture holes are, but an engineered solvent by far will help your printer process compared to using IPA. Why is it unsafe to use IPA? There's only one reason why it's unsafe, and it's because it's very flammable. Other reasons I wouldn't use it, not that it's unsafe, but it just does not solubilize paste like engineered chemistries with the paste technology that's out there today. And with that, stay tuned in the coming weeks for parts 2, 3, and 4 of a 4-part series for your printers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, William. Thanks.
Thanks, Jody. Thank you guys for tuning into this Tech to Tech session. If you would like to discuss this topic further or have any questions not answered in the session, please contact your local KYZEN regional manager or send an email to tech@KYZEN.com, and we will have someone follow up with you as soon as possible. And if you like this video, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms for more expert cleaning content.